Welcome to the Willow Creek Online Training Program. Today's module is entitled, Welcome to Emergency Preparedness. So first of all, let me welcome you to the class. It's going to be a great class. You're going to learn a lot, and I think will help you to reduce the risk should a disaster come our way. That's the big objective. The purpose of this particular model, introduce the class content, define the nature of risk, and yes, state the class objective. So let's get started. This is the class content, and I believe there's 18 or 17 modules here. And if you add all the times together, there's a lecture time of 2 hours, 52 minutes, almost 3 hours. You know, you're going to probably do a couple hours of testing because there's tests for each one of these. So you're probably going to be in about 5 hours. But if you spread that over a month, that's not bad at all. That's probably 5-10 minutes a day or something, not even that much. But anyway, let's look at it. There's the introduction. Then we'll go over a family disaster plan as defined by American Red Cross. Then we'll go over all these risks. There's certain risks by where you live. And along the Wasatch Front, we're going to look at earthquakes and landslides, radon gas, lightning, winter storms, flooding. Okay, we're going to go over all those. As you see, they're pretty short, but we're going to go over them to where you understand what the risk is and a few ideas of how you can reduce the severity of those. Okay, and once we get through with understanding the risk, then we'll start talking about what we need to do about risk. First, a home preparedness checklist, how to prepare for an earthquake, what to do during an earthquake, what to do after an earthquake. So we hit earthquakes pretty hard. How to prevent house fires. Then carbon monoxide, the silent killer, we need to be aware of that. What to do during a fire, and then we'll have emergency preparedness for water, emergency preparedness for food, and then at the end, after you get everything under control in your house, then you can come and help the neighbors. We'll teach you about the neighborhood plan on responding to disasters. And it's pretty thorough. I think the whole class, you're going to enjoy it, and it's definitely going to give you some ideas to go out and prepare yourself for a disaster. First of all, let's talk about risk. Risk has two elements. There's a probability of occurrence and severity. For example, probability of occurrence of an earthquake, it's set. We can't change that. We have no impact on the probability of occurrence of an earthquake. So the only thing we have any control over is the severity. And if we come up with a good plan on how we're going to respond for an earthquake or fire or flood, whatever it is, if we can have a good plan and implement that plan, we can significantly reduce the severity. So no control over probability with things like earthquakes, but severity we have quite a bit of control. Let's do an example here. There is a 43% probability. Okay, that's the first element, isn't it? Probability of occurrence. There's a 43% probability that the Wasatch Front region in Utah will experience at least one magnitude 6.7 or greater earthquake. And it could even get up to 7.5, the experts say, but we hope it doesn't. And 57% probability of at least one magnitude 6 earthquake in the next 50 years. That's what researchers say. So there's your probabilities. So what will the severity be? That's a great question. To a certain extent, this is dependent on how prepared you are for such an emergency. And that's the objective of this class, is help you prepare for that so we can reduce the severity of a disaster in our neighborhoods. All right, there's this thing called residual risk, and this is what we want to do. The yellow here is your emergency plan implementation. And you've implemented it, and there's still risk left over. There will always be risk left over. This risk is the risk that the family emergency plan and its implementation wasn't as good as you wanted it to be, so you're going to have some failure here. Okay? And you can't get that down to zero, by the way. I wish you could, but you can't. That's just the nature of life. You can't get it to zero. But you want to make this powerful enough, your family emergency plan and implementation large enough to where this black residual risk is to a level that you're happy with. That's what we're looking for. That's what we really hope. Now notice this one, the Emergency Preparedness Plan doesn't cover a lot of the probabilities, and so you say too much risk, not acceptable. Too much, it's not acceptable. So you improve your family emergency plan and implementation, and now let's read this. Reasonable residual risk. So now you're happy with it. Acceptable. I am all right with this. Okay, that's called acceptable risk. Now let's go over it formally. Acceptable risk is less than or equal to the maximum tolerable risk. So if you say, hey, I'm willing to take 5% risk, I'm okay with 5%. Okay, very good. And you put in an implementation plan and it's 4%, you say, hey, that's below my 5, that's acceptable, that's good. That's called acceptable risk. The main objective of this class is to help you implement a family disaster plan that will help the residual risk, which is inherent from your family disaster plan, to be less than your family's acceptable risk. In other words, when you get through and implement this, you say, hey, we're good. That's the objective of the class, is to make this happen. But I don't want you to define your acceptable risk yet. I want you to go through the class and listen to all the emergencies, because right now you are probably going to be willing to take much more risk. But when I show you the risk that's out there and some potential outcomes, you may say, hey, I'm glad I took the class. After all, I thought this was good enough. I'm not happy with this anymore. Okay, let's get together, work on this until you and your family are happy. But only after you know what the risks are. That's why I want you to take the class before you determine what your acceptable risk is. Sometimes you want to take more risk because you don't understand the full story. Do you see what I'm saying? So go through the whole class for me and then say, okay, now what's my risk? What am I willing to do to be happy and feel secure? So there's many things that can go wrong here, and here's just a bunch of pictures of natural disasters. There's an earthquake one there. Of course, along the Wasatch, earthquake always bothers us. Fires, though, are always a problem pretty much wherever you go. So we need to worry. We're going to do a deep dive on earthquakes and fires. Okay, that's what we're shooting for. There you have it, the objective. And I look forward to working with you. There is a module exam for each one of these lectures, so be sure and complete your module exam. Congratulations, you have completed this module. Remember to always think ahead, be prepared, be safe, and be happy. Have a great day. Goodbye.